Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my June reading wrap up. I cannot believe that we are officially halfway through 2024. I feel like the year has gone like slow and fast at the same time because I feel like it's gone really quickly, but at the same time like I think back to the start of the year and it feels like years ago. This is actually the second time I've had to film this because the first time I filmed it the lighting was really bad, so I'm hoping that it turns out better this time. I feel like it's been a bit of a weird reading month for me, honestly a weird reading year because I've been in such a bad slump the whole year on and off, but I do feel like I had some successful reads this month and I'm so excited to talk about them. So as usual, I'm going to show the statistics first in this video and the genre breakdown of the books that I've read. So I ended up reading 9 books in the month of June. I had 0 DNFs, which is great because I feel like the last few months I have had a couple, but this month I didn't. Out of those 9 books, I read 4,263 pages. I feel like whenever I do this, I'm always like in the 4,000s, which means I'm always reading like a similar amount of pages, which is good. My average rating was 4.3 stars, and out of my TBR books, I read 3 out of the 6 that I set myself, which is really successful because last month I didn't read any of the books that I set on my TBR, so I feel like this is a lot better. The genre breakdown is 5 fantasy, 2 romance and 2 thrillers. So with all of that being said, let's get straight into the wrap up. I'm going to start off with a book that I don't have a physical copy for just because I feel like I may forget it at the end. I read a novella called A Welcome Reunion by Lucinda Berry, and this comes after The Perfect Child, which I read last month. I can't really talk about this too much because I don't want to spoil anything from The Perfect Child, but it pretty much just added on to the end of the story, which I really liked. I feel like it gave me a lot more, not closure, but I feel like it answered a lot more of my questions. It was only like an 80-page novella, so I didn't actually rate it because I feel like it's just unfair to rate novellas, but I honestly did really enjoy it and I think it was worth the read because, as I just said, it's only 80 pages, so you can't really go wrong with it. The next book I read was one of the books that I set myself on my June TBR, and that was Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the 4th book in the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series. So the first 3 books are the Addicted series, and this is technically the first book in the Calloway Sisters part of the series, and this is the first book following Rose and Connor mainly, but you do see all the sisters in all the books anyway, which I love. This series kind of gives like Gossip Girl vibes, and in this particular book it felt like Keeping Up with the Kardashians because they had like a reality TV show and all of this like crazy drama was happening in this book. I was literally like gobsmacked with the ending of this book. Like, I was not expecting it at all. There was one particular character in this book that I absolutely despised, and if you've read this series, which I feel like a lot of you probably have, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. He was just like one of the most awful characters I've ever read about. But overall, I honestly really liked this. It did take me a while to get through just because I feel like for some reason the writing in this is really small and really faint. I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason the writing, like, it doesn't look black, it looks almost like grey, so I just was really struggling to read it, and I really didn't want to pay like $15 to get it on my Kindle, so I kind of just suffered through it and read really slow. But I honestly did really enjoy it and I ended up giving it 4 stars, which is a really good rating, and I'm just honestly so excited that I've finally continued this series because it's been like a year since I read the first 3 books, so it's definitely long overdue, and the way this one ended just makes me so excited to continue the series. The next 3 books go hand in hand because they are all from the same series, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be proud of me, or at least I hope you're proud of me. I finally finished the Harry Potter series for the first ever time reading it. So I read the 5th, 6th and 7th book in the month of June, and I'm literally obsessed with this world now. I totally get all the hype and I get why everyone loves it. I can't talk about the synopsis of any of these books because I don't want to spoil anything, because I actively avoided spoilers at all costs and I somehow got to the end without getting spoiled of anything, and so I don't want to spoil it for anyone else, but I'm going to tell you my rating for each book. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. This is like one of the longest books in the series, so this is like 800 pages, and it also took a really long time to actually get into this book, but once I did get into this book I honestly really enjoyed it. I think I half listened to this one as an audiobook, so it really helped me to get through it as well. I honestly really liked this one and I wasn't really expecting to. I think the Goblet of Fire was like one of my favorites, but this is like probably my second favorite, so I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I really liked the synopsis of this one and I really liked the ideas that were in this book. I was not expecting the ending of this whatsoever. It was so emotional and heartbreaking, and I wasn't expecting to feel so many emotions within this series, but I did, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Ending on an amazing note, I read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and this was a 5-star read. This is the only one I rated 5 stars in the series, but at the same time I would say that this is a 5-star series overall, even though like this was really heartbreaking and there was so many things that happened that I was just like, why did that have to happen? I do really love how the series all came together at the end, and I really liked the epilogue as well. I just feel like most of the characters got the ending that I would have wanted them to get, and that's what I really loved about this. I wasn't expecting like a kiddie series to be so dark either, because when I was growing up and like when I've been putting off this series, I always thought of it as like a kids series, but it's actually really not, and I've come to realize that now. I feel like the first few books are, and then they just get darker and darker, but literally obsessed. I feel like I'm like a Harry Potter stan now. I'm really late to the game. I am just trying to buy everything Harry Potter themed now. Next up, I read The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden, which is the third and I believe final book in the Housemaid trilogy. I read the first 2 books in the Housemaid series last year, and I actually started off all of my Frida McFadden reads, and now I've read every single one of her books. Those first 2 books I absolutely loved. I think I almost read them like back to back, and so I have been so excited for this release. Like, this was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. Although I really loved this, I did give it 4 stars, and that twist at the end really got me. I do feel like because it took such a different route than the other books, I can't really say anything, but it just felt like a completely different storyline, and I feel like she could have made this into a separate book that wasn't linked to those first 2 books, if that makes any sense. Like, it just feels like the series is a little bit dragged on, even though of course she got me at the end with the twist and everything that came together at the end was so shocking. I just feel like it was a little bit dragged on. Still definitely one of her better reads. I feel like I've read quite a few Frida McFadden books that I was like, what is this? Like, this is so stupid and I don't like this at all. But this one I did really like the whole way through, and I literally sat on the couch and read it in one sitting. So if that tells you anything, if you haven't read this series, I highly recommend, because I feel like the books like start really good and then they kind of get worse as they go, but they're still all really good books. Next up we have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is a book that I had been seeing everyone talk about and everyone rave about and say how much of a beautiful book it is and how obsessed they are with it. And honestly, I still don't know how to feel about this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. Let's just start with that. So pretty much I half read this, half listened to it. Like, I kind of feel like I read up to like 60%, listened to 30%, and then I read the last little bit like physically in the book. And honestly, I just felt so lost and so confused for majority of this book. That being said, the parts of the story that I did understand and the writing that was really beautiful made me really like this book. So I'm so conflicted on how I feel, because I still feel confused about what actually happened at the end and who the characters are. And even though there's like a glossary at the back of the book and like a character profile list, I still just felt lost, even though I was like referring to that the whole entire time. When I think back to reading this, I honestly just don't have much recollection of what actually happened. I just know that there was a lot of tension between our 2 main characters at the start. I'm also really disappointed because I actually ordered the Fairy Loot edition when I was like halfway through this, and I thought that I was going to be like automatically obsessed. And now I don't even know if I should have ordered the Fairy Loot edition. Like, it's gorgeous, but I feel like someone else would have loved it a lot more. That being said, this was like the first ever high fantasy that I've ever read, and so I might read this again in a couple of months and I'll definitely understand more the second time around, because that's how it always goes when you reread a book. I do still have really high hopes for the rest of the series. I do think that it will be an amazing series and an amazing world, because this was pretty much just the setup, and that's what was the most confusing for me. Like, there was a lot of very strange things happening, so I was just a little bit confused. Okay, we have 2 books to go. The next one is Reckless by Elsie Silver, which is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series. Okay, I stand by the fact that Heartless, the second book, has been my favorite so far, but this is definitely my second favorite in the series. This is following Winter, who is like the cold older sister of Summer in the first book, and Theo, who doesn't really take shit from anyone. There is like a trope in this book that I was not expecting whatsoever, because I went into this like blind, not knowing the tropes or anything like that, and so I'm not going to say it here either, but the trope was really unexpected, and it's not a trope that I normally love, but I feel like Elsie Silver takes all of these tropes that we're really unsure about and then makes them really good. So I actually really liked it in this book, and I think it was perfect for the characters in this book. I honestly just really loved this, and I love Winter as well. I love her like little redemption and her character development from the first book, because I feel like we saw her being such a cold-hearted person, and then all of a sudden we see her whole backstory and we see why she is the way she is, and we totally understand. I really like this. I feel like these characters are real in my mind, and I'm sad for this series to end with the next book, but I'm also really excited to see what the next book holds, because I just feel like this whole series has been amazing. I gave it 4.5 stars. The last book I read was probably hands down my favorite from the month, and that was The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli, also known as Heartless Hunter. I'm going to try to explain the synopsis of this the best I possibly can, but it's a little bit confusing. So pretty much it's following our main female character, who is the Crimson Moth, and she is being hunted by by the main male character who doesn't know that she is a crimson moth. The crimson moth is this person who kind of like lets all these witches who have been captive out because she is a witch herself, so she wants to let them go. There is like every single trope in this book that I absolutely loved. There was like enemies to lovers, there was betrayal. I just loved every single second of this book that I was reading this. I will say I feel like it did take me a while to get into. Like it wasn't till about 20 or 30% in that I really started to connect with the story and love it and wasn't able to put it down. But once I did get to that part, obviously, as I just said, I absolutely loved it. Like this was like a 5, maybe 6-star read for me. It was just absolutely perfect, and I think that it's going to be the perfect series. The second book isn't coming out until like February next year, so if you haven't read this yet, make sure you go and do so you can read the second book when it comes out. I also really want the Fairy Loot edition of this book because it is absolutely stunning, and I also need to go and buy the proper paperback as well because this is actually the ARC copy, and I love having this copy. Like this is one of my most prized possessions, but I also really love the cover of the book, so I want to have the normal cover as well just because it is a stunning cover. Anyway, that was the last book that I had to go through for this video. So here are the 9 books that I read in the month of June. Technically 8 because the 9th one is on my Kindle, but I just feel like I had quite a good successful reading month. I feel like because I finished Harry Potter, it felt extra successful for me because I'm like, I've been putting off this series for such a long time, so I'm so glad I finally finished it. I feel like this video is a bit all over the place and I'm like very jumbled with my talking today. I sound very congested and it's just not how I wanted this video to go, but as I said, I tried to film it yesterday and it was just horrible, so I had to redo it today. Nonetheless, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and got some recommendations from this. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel and give the video a like because it will really help me out. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in my next one.